Howdy, and welcome to episode 43 of T-Shirts and Shawls. I'm Karen, and today is Thursday, not December, November 30th, almost December, 2017. So November 30th, 2017. So you might see by my setup behind me, I'm trying something a little bit different today. I got some new lighting, which I'm trying to kind of adjust right now. It's really, really bright. So I might need to kind of make some adjustments, but hopefully you'll be able to see the screen and the colors a little bit better. So we'll see how that goes. And then the other thing that I'm doing is I'm actually sitting on my floor instead of in a chair, since the cats, especially Wally, have been super interested in trying to get my attention while I'm podcasting. I thought it might be helpful to just sit on my floor, so that way my lap is a little bit easier for a cat to get access to, and maybe Wally won't try to climb around the camera quite as much. So we'll see how that goes as well. Anyway, we'll go ahead and get started with today's episode. So for today's shirt, I am wearing my shirt for PLY Magazine. So this is PLY, and then here in the Y, it says Magazine. And indeed, by the way, Wally has decided to sit in my lap. So here he is. Anyway, so I'm wearing my PLY Magazine shirt because just a few days ago on the 27th, it was my 3-year anniversary of working for PLY. So I know I mentioned it on the podcast before, but in case you're new to the podcast, or in case you don't remember, I am the copy editor for PLY. So that basically means I go through all the articles, I check them to make sure that the organization and flow of the article is there, and also I check for grammatical mistakes and fix those. So I've been doing that for 3 years. And the very first issue that I worked on was the Lester's issue. So I wanted to kind of show you that. So this came out spring of 2015. Since it's a magazine, there's many steps to the process. Basically, we're working on the articles like 2 issues ahead of when they get released. So this was the first issue that I worked on. And basically how the whole copy editing thing came about is that PLY had sent out a call for applications for the copy editor position. And there was a series of questions to answer, and then they also sent out an unedited article, and asked us to edit it as if we were the copy editor, how would we do it? And we were given a style sheet. So if you've never heard of that term before, a style sheet basically says what kinds of decisions have been made as far as how especially stylistic, grammatical things should be done. So for example, in PLY Magazine, we actually use Arabic, the numerals, rather than writing out numbers. So even though most places write out like the word 2, we actually just use the numeral 2. Now Miss Eva is coming in here as well. So that's on the style sheet, decisions of which words are hyphenated and not hyphenated. The decision that if an author is Canadian and they want to spell fiber with an R-E on the end, then we're not going to change it. We're going to use the regional spellings from where the author comes from. So all of those types of things are on the style sheet. Anyway, so we were given the style sheet and then an article to edit. So when I saw this call for applications, I got really, really excited because I thought, oh my gosh, I'm a copy editor. That is what I do. And I'm also a spinner. And this would just be a really awesome way of putting those 2 things together. I would love to get this job. So I spent a long time studying the style sheet, going through that sample edit, making sure that everything I was doing was adhering to the style sheet. And then also just doing, regular copy editing thing. Answered all the questions that they asked for. And then I think I spent the most time agonizing over the 2 sentences in the email in which I say, I want to apply. Please consider me. That's basically, the idea behind those sentences, but you want to say a little bit more than that. And I remember, I think I agonized over those 2 or 3 sentences probably more than anything else, because I wanted to be serious enough, the show that I had the qualifications for this, but also show my excitement a little bit, which can be kind of hard to get a balance, especially in writing. So I may have come across a little cheesy, I don't know. But I tried to be, the cats are not happy with each other. They're exploring because I've got the light set up, so it's all unusual, and they're wondering what is going on in here. Anyway, so I spent quite a bit of time on the application, and then I submitted it. And I don't remember if we were given a time frame for when decisions would be made, but I do remember that I had my phone and I was checking my email over and over and over again for, I think it was about a week, maybe a little bit less, of the time after I submitted my application. I really, really wanted it, and I wanted to find out, as soon as possible. And I guess, I thought the more I check my email, the more likely it is that something's going to show up. Anyway, but I remember it was actually Thanksgiving Day, so 3 years ago on Thanksgiving Day. Part of me was like, oh, it's Thanksgiving Day, I'm probably not going to get an email today. It is a holiday. But I continued to check my emails. So while, getting the dinner ready, we were actually hosting it at my house that year, and checking my phone. And sure enough, that's the day the email came in. So I'm glad that I apologize to my family for having my phone out and checking it so often that day, but that is the day I got the email. And I basically just remember, getting it, seeing that it came, from JC at PLY Magazine. Ooh, Wally is up on top of the boxes here, so that's why they're kind of shaking. Hopefully he doesn't jump down on me. Anyway, so I remember, seeing the email and thinking, oh my gosh, this could be it. And opening the email and just, doing the quick skim. And I don't remember the exact words. I have it saved in my email box somewhere. But something about, we've made our selection and we want you. And just did I read it right? Does that mean that they picked me? Oh my gosh. So, kind of immediately responding, saying, yes, I'm so excited. I am thrilled. Yes, I accept. I want this. And she said, great. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Well, I'll get back with you in a couple of days. We've already got a stack of articles for you to edit, which I showed you the Lester's issue. Those articles. So absolutely thrilling time. Later, when JC made the announcement of the copy editor, she wrote a blog post on the PLY website, and it turns out they had something like 200 applications. So I feel blessed and fortunate and amazed that there was something about my application that managed to catch their attention. So I'm very, very thankful for that. I guess it was appropriate. Thanksgiving was the day that I found out that they picked me. So even though the day of Thanksgiving, kind of changes, so the 27th, the anniversary was not Thanksgiving Day this year. I kind of have I feel like I have two anniversaries. The Thanksgiving Day, I'm thankful for this amazing opportunity, and then the actual day. So 3 years ago, I joined the team at PLY, and it's been wonderful. Getting to read. I mean, I probably would be reading the magazine anyway because it's such a good magazine. But being able to really kind of dig in and dive into the articles a little more in depth than I might normally do if I were just reading the magazine. So I've really enjoyed my time at PLY, and in fact, so first issue I worked on, here is the title page, and there's me, copy editor, first time that it was there in the magazine. So really exciting to see that. And I don't remember for sure which was the first article that I edited, but I'm pretty sure it was the one by Deb Robson that was about the 3 breeds that we were looking at with the Lesters. So anyway, it's been a wonderful journey the past 3 years, and I'm hoping for many, many more. PLY is expanding, starting a line of books. So the first book is actually one that JC is writing, and And we've already been doing the copy editing of it. In fact, I did the last couple of chapters just yesterday, and she sent me the introduction today, so that is something that probably while this episode is uploading, I'll be working on copy editing that. And I believe it's in the spring that book will be coming out. So PLY is growing and doing more. The magazine is wonderful, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with the books. So if you are a spinner and you have not subscribed to PLY Magazine, what are you waiting for? It really, really is, I think, the best magazine out there for spinning. I know there are other magazines and they are good, but I really think that PLY is just the depth of content, the fact that advertising is a very small part, 12 to 15% of the issue, and is very, very targeted and focused. So the advertisements that are there are very interesting, but it's full of really, really great content. So if you're a spinner, please subscribe to PLY. Because advertising is light, the way the magazine makes money or is able to continue running is through subscriptions. So the magazine needs subscriptions to be able to continue offering all of the wonderful content. So little bit of a plug there for subscribing. But if you are a spinner, or if you just want to learn, it's not always about spinning. I mean, you can learn about fiber. There's I think she's in archaeology, but an academic, Christina Pappas, who does historical articles in several of the issues. So even if you're not a spinner, there's stuff in there that's definitely interesting, that's worth checking out. Anyway, so I've enjoyed working with PLY the past 3 years, and I'm looking forward to many more years. In the previous episode, I remember skipping the shawl section and telling you guys that I needed to go through my Ravelry account and make a list of all the shawls that I have made, and then cross off the ones that I've already talked about, so that way I'll know which ones I still need to talk about. And because I hadn't made that list, I didn't have a shawl to talk about. Then when I got to the what I'm knitting section, I remember just kind of breezing by and saying, now that I've finished the green shawl, blah, 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 blah. Totally didn't realize until I was actually editing the show notes and saw that the green shawl was still in the what I'm knitting section rather than the what I finished section. I have not shown you guys the finished green shawl, nor did I talk about finishing it. I think I was just so relieved to have it done that to me it was just done. And I didn't even need to talk about it anymore. Although since it's a pattern that I'm developing, I have a lot more that I need to do with it. Anyway, so the green shawl is done. There are 2 ends that I need to weave in. Actually, yeah, there's the second one. 2 ends that I need to weave in, so technically not done, but it has been blocked. So there it is. So it's a semicircle, a half pie shawl. And this time, when you wear it, the flowers are right side up. So if you have watched the podcast before, it was earlier this year. I don't think it's quite been a year, but earlier this year, I knit the first version of this shawl. And when I put it on the blocking mats and looked at it, I realized I'd made a terrible, horrible mistake. And that the flower motif, which each of the little lace patterns are little flowers, when you were wearing it, the flowers were upside down. And because, to me, the flowers were a really important part of the design, because this is, I'm calling it Dame Nature, which is part of the Parliament of Fowls from Chaucer's work, which is what I based my book, Parliament of Cowls, on, because originally this was actually supposed to be part of that book. Just a little bonus. So it'll be kind of a companion to the book. Anyway, so the flowers were really important, and I didn't want them upside down. But it was so disheartening to get through the shawl and realize that I had knit it upside down that I had to put it aside for a long time. And then I finally came back to it and started working on it some more. And I guess it was because I I had already knit it once before. I was kind of frustrated with knitting it before, and there were lots of other things I wanted to work on. This was a slog to get through. It was really hard. I mean, I don't even know how many episodes I've talked about this shawl. So if you've watched the podcast, then maybe you remember. So it took me quite a while to be able to get through this until I finally just pushed through and said, I am going to finish this. So finish it I have. The edge here is curling a little bit because when I was blocking it, I took it off the blocking mat before it had completely dried. Part of that was because I was having trouble keeping the cats away from this while it was blocking. And I have those foam interlocking mats that I use for blocking. And so what I did is I actually put some more of the foam mats on top of the shawl. And I thought, since I'm using pins, that the pins would kind of keep it up, so it's not laying directly on the shawl. So hopefully there's a little bit of airflow in there to help dry it. But I think it definitely impeded that airflow, and it kept it damp a lot longer than it normally takes. But it was that or risk leaving it out in the open. Even if I shut the room off, the cats still come in whenever I'm in here. And I didn't want to risk a cat attacking it and ruining it, because if I had to knit this a third time, I'll just be honest, you guys, that would not happen. I do really like this, but it's just, yeah, I don't think I have it in me to knit another one, especially not right away. So anyway, so I don't think that it was drying very fast, and then I pulled it up and started to unpin it because I checked the middle, and the middle was dry, and so I started unpinning it, and that's when I realized that the edges were not dry, and I was a little lazy and I didn't put the pins back in, and I thought, well, if I just put that foam mat back on top, it'll kind of, push it down and keep it from curling, and I think instead it just made it even less dry, or less, fast at drying. And when I finally pulled it off the blocking mat, because it was sandwiched between the blocking mats, I think a cat had actually gotten a little edge and pulled it out, because I noticed part of it was kind of hanging out after I had kind of left the room and come back in just a few minutes later. And I was paranoid about the cats ruining it, so I went ahead and pulled it out. It wasn't completely dry, so the edge is curling a bit. Which the edge is going to curl a little anyway because it's a stockinette base. But usually if you block and let it dry completely, especially since I was making little points with it, that usually helps. So I think I may need to do like a steam blocking or something to get that edge pinned back out. Have to not be lazy. Pin out the edge and get it to lay a little flatter before I take pictures of it. Anyway, so there are a couple of things that I need to do for kind of revising the pattern. Just a couple of little notes that I made while I was knitting it. And then I need to do final measurements. Be honest, I blocked it. When I say I blocked it this week. I started on Monday. So yeah, I need to, now that it is blocked, I need to take final measurements and do all of that. Check my tech editor schedule, send it off to my tech editor, and so I'm looking at definitely after the new year before it is ready for test knitting. But if any of you, it really is a fun shawl, and it probably doesn't take quite as long as I made it take. I was just kind of resisting knitting it. But if you are interested in potentially test knitting when it is ready for test knitting, make sure you are a member of my Ravelry group, not the podcast group, but the other group, the Karen Dawn Design / Roundtable Yarns group. And I will put that in the show notes if you are not already a member, so you can find it. So make sure you're a member of the group, because that's where I do test knits. And then if you want to be absolutely sure that you get notified when the test knit goes live, send me a message. You can just send me a private message on Ravelry, and I will add you to what I call the ear burn list, where I notify everybody on that list whenever the test knit goes live, so you get a notification. So there's the shawl. It is finished, and eventually will be published. I hope what I really want to do is have it ready for DFW Fiber Fest, kind of have that be the release date. So that is my goal, and hopefully everything will work out for it. Since it is the holiday time and I have been working on some gift knitting, I have several things that I've finished in the past 2 weeks. So yay for finished objects. So the first thing is a project you guys have seen me working on. This is the long and winding row. If you remember, if you've been watching the podcast, this is some hand spun yarn that I basically killed. I over twisted and just made a complete mess of this. The gorgeous colors in this yarn is kind of the reason why I wanted to keep working on it. So complete mess of the yarn. It was 100% merino, and I made merino feel rough and not soft at all. So, but again, the colors are so pretty. The dyer for the fiber is A Thing for String. She is actually one of the local Dallas DFW area dyers. Her name is Mickey. Anyway, so I still wanted to use the fiber. So I started this cowl called The Long and Winding Row by Susan Ashcroft and realized this is not something I wanted to wear around my neck. It is not soft. I mean, you can't see that in the video, but maybe you can see some of the really, really overly twisted sections there. Yeah, not pretty. Anyway, so, and I know, again, if you've watched the podcast, I did mention what I'm planning to do with this. Basically, I finished it, and then I've already folded it over, so you can kind of see, see, since I'm folding it over, I'm not really weaving in ends. So, anyway, so I folded it over, so the two edges there. So there's the fold. And basically, I don't have a surface to put it down on, but it stands up by itself pretty well. So what I'm going to do is get like a leather, maybe wood, maybe wicker, but probably leather, kind of circle to put as a bottom, and it's going to be a little basket. So I think that is something to turn something that was kind of not very usable yarn into something that's actually really pretty. And I think my mother-in-law would really like this, so it is going to be her present. So I'm showing it to you as a finished item, even though I haven't put the bottom in. But I definitely wanted to make sure to show it to you because I'll probably still have time between now and the next episode to show you the other things that I'm finishing, but I will need to start wrapping Christmas presents pretty soon. Anyway, so pretty much finished. The knitting part is finished. And I'm actually kind of happy with how that turned out. Then I decided to knit a bunch of hats. That's really kind of what I've been focusing on, knitting hats as gifts. So I have this hat here, which the yarn, I think I started this, I think I showed you guys the last time that I started this. So it's from Toil and Trouble, which I picked up when I was in Salem, Massachusetts. And the hat pattern is something I will put in the show notes because it is slipping my mind right now. Wow, I'm so sorry. Maybe if I remember, maybe I'll put it on the screen, but definitely it'll be in the show notes. But it's a really neat pattern. It uses cables to create kind of this chevron effect, and then it comes up to the top there. And even though I haven't added it yet because I wanted to block it first, so it is now dry, I made a pom-pom. So now that it's dry, I need to put the pom-pom on the hat. There, when it's fastened, it'll be much more secure there. So there, the top of the hat will have a cute little pom-pom. And this is for one of my nieces. So I think she will like that. And then I made this hat. So this is, I think I forgot to grab the tag for this yarn, but this is a tree hugger's wife. So yarn that I picked up when I was in Alaska in 2010. So it's been in my stash for a little while. But anyway, I picked it up while I was on a cruise, an Alaskan cruise, and my in-laws were with us. So I made this hat for my father-in-law, and I thought it would be really nice, since it was yarn that I picked up while I was traveling with them, that I would make sure to mention that as part of the gift. And I think it adds just a little extra meaning to the gift. So this is my Fafner hat. So it has these kind of, and since it's a men's hat and my little hat form is more of a woman's size, the hat like completely just overwhelms it. Anyway, so it has these kind of diamond shaped cables in here, which I feel, since it's kind of more angular and geometric, it seems a little more like a masculine type of thing. So anyway, so this is Fafner, my design, for my father-in-law. Hold on just a second, Wally is in the trash can. No trash can for Wally. Okay. I put like clippings of yarn and stuff in there, so I want to make sure that the cats don't get in the trash can. Then the other hat that I have finished, it is too cute. This is Pandemonium. So super, super cute hat. I don't do a lot of stranded color work, but it was worth it for this hat because it's really, really awesomely cute. I used Cascade 220 Superwash since I wanted to do, the several different colors. It's a really good yarn to be able to have a good selection of colors. My only kind of regret is that I wish I had picked a different purple. Maybe not, I don't know. When I was working on knitting this in the lighting, which was terrible apparently, that I was sitting in, I really could not tell much of a difference between the gray and the purple. And I was thinking, why am I even bothering, doing this, effect where I'm doing a little bit of gray, a little bit of purple, and then gradually getting all to purple. If it's not even going to show, but in better lighting and daylight, I do see that there is a difference in the gray and the purple, but it's a pretty slight difference, so it doesn't show super well. But anyway, so there is that hat. This is for my niece who really loves pandas, and so I thought that this would be a really appropriate hat for her, and I do still need to make a pom-pom for it. I haven't done that yet, so I will make that pom-pom and add it, and then that hat will be finished. And then I can start wrapping some of these presents for Christmas. So that is done, and I have one more, there it is, one more finished object. So I knew that I wanted to make something for Luke's teacher, and I was trying to think of what I wanted to make her, and instead of a hat I decided to do a cowl, because I thought, especially when they're out there at recess time, they go out even when it's pretty chilly. I think as long as it's above 40 they go out for recess, which is good because I think the kids need the recess. Gosh, the light, the way it's kind of shining on my chin is kind of weird. Anyway, so the kids are going out to recess even when it's pretty chilly. So I thought it might be something nice just that she could grab and wrap around her neck to help keep her warm a little bit. So I used, because it's finished, yarn from Safroni, which is the dyer who dyes for the Knitting Fairy, my local yarn shop. And this is her Wish base, which is technically a bulky weight, though it's not like super duper bulky. I'll show you in just a minute. And it's 100% superwash merino, but the really neat thing about this yarn, and I'll show you in the yarn form, is that it's a chainette yarn. So I don't know if you can see that. Hopefully you can see that detail. So especially if I kind of pull it out and pull it in. So the yarn itself, it's kind of like, I don't know if it's really a crochet chain or a knitted chain type of thing, but it's definitely not twisted plies like yarn usually is. So hopefully you can see that detail in there and that chainette type of function. And I thought that would be really appropriate because it's because of that construction, it's got a lot of air in it, so it's very squishy. And so when I was thinking about, squishy yarn, well, what kind of fabric might I want to do to kind of emphasize that squishiness? And I thought, ooh, brioche is squishy. So what if I use a really squishy yarn and do some really squishy brioche? I'll come up with something that's extra squishy. And that's what I did. So this is a very, very basic cowl. So it's a long cowl, so she can wrap it around twice. So a very, very basic brioche cowl. I picked these two colors because on her teacher list of favorites, she said her favorite colors were navy and white, so I thought this was appropriate. So that's that side, and then with brioche, since it's reversible, the white is the emphasis there, the blue is the emphasis here, so she can wear it whichever side out she likes. Anyway, so it was pretty simple. I mean, pretty much casting on and then just doing straight brioche. The tricky part for me is I realized that my other brioche projects, which have only been 2, I haven't done a lot, were knit flat. So I hadn't done brioche in the round before, so it was a little bit tricky to figure out the change at the beginning and end of the round. So if you notice, I didn't always get that change, so here's where my change is. I didn't really get that very well at first, but I did get better as it went on. So this was the beginning, and then as it went on, I was definitely a lot better. Still not excellent at it, but definitely way better than down here at the beginning. So there's that, and then you can also see on that side how it's a little bit messy there. And probably I should have ripped it out and started over once I got the hang of it, but yeah, I decided not to. I think it gives it maybe a little bit more character, I don't know. A little excuse for not ripping it out and starting over. But anyway, I feel a lot more comfortable now. There are probably some tricks and tips that I want to look up and see if anyone has some advice for, maybe if you know of some, you can suggest some advice for knitting brioche in the round. But I do feel like I got a much better hang of it toward the end, getting a system of where the yarn should go and how it should move and function. So anyway, so that is done. I'm very happy about it and looking forward to giving that to Luke's teacher. So I'm looking around, making sure those are all the finished objects. I've got a lot of works in progress, so we'll move on to that. What am I knitting? First of all, before I start that, I did look up, between clips, I did look up the name of this pattern. This is Shasta. So again, I will link it in the show notes, but Shasta. Okay, so what I have on the needles, more gift knitting because I still have a series of gifts that I want to finish, mostly hats. Although I do have a pair of boot cuffs that I'm planning to make. I've never made boot cuffs before, but my sister wears boots quite often, so I think she would enjoy having some kind of decorative boot cuffs. And so I'm gonna try that out, make some for her. So mostly hats, so I'll start with the hats. And this one I actually just started last night, so it's not going to look like much. I've just basically done the brim so far. But basically this is a very, very simple hat that I am making for my nephew. So really a nice blue color, something that I think that he'll like. This is shepherd's wool. So that's the yarn that I'm using from Stonehenge Fiber Mill, made in Michigan. And this is the royal blue color. It's a worsted weight yarn. So this is a 1x1 rib, pretty simple. But again, since I don't think that he would want anything super cable-y or anything like that. I think simple is good for him. And then my plan, hopefully, is because this even though this is worsted weight, it actually has 250 yards in the skein. So I'm hoping I can get 2 hats out of it, so I can make one for him as well as his dad. So my brother-in-law. And I thought it might be kind of nice, even though they're super simple hats, for them to have hats that are matching. So that's my plan. Hopefully I will be able to get that done. I'll be able to get the hats done, but hopefully I'll be able to get it done with the yarn because I only have one skein. And then the other hat that I'm working on is, this is the yarn. So it is more of a variegated yarn, which I don't use very often, but I did pick this up when I was in Colorado. Actually gonna kind of cover up the price. So this is from MJ Yarns, so hand dyed in Colorado. Whenever I travel, I do try to pick up things that are local. So this is actually a DK weight yarn that is a Polworth and silk blend. So it's a really nice yarn. And right now it looks a little bit funky on the needles. But basically this is called, the hat pattern is Distinct Moral Support. It's in one of Hunter Hammerson's books, and it's a really intriguing little pattern. So basically what you do is you've got a bunch of short rows on this side of the hat. So you start out and you knit the brim, and then you do all these short rows, and now I'm knitting just back in the round. But the idea is that I've got this waste yarn here to mark these stitches, and I'm going to actually put those stitches back on needles and make them live and create a little tab that runs up the side here, and that will gather this fabric. It'll look a lot better hopefully whenever I've actually got it. So it'll gather this fabric, this little tab, and kind of create this little gathered edge over here on the side. And I thought that was really cute, and I have an older niece who's 16, and I think that is a little stylish touch to the hat, and I think she might like that quite a bit. So that is the plan there. So right now on the needles it looks really, really weird, but it looked fabulous in the pictures, and I think once I've got that tab and I actually, you know, do it the way it's supposed to be done, it will look a lot better. But that's fun. And although this is variegated, the colors are very similar to one another, so it's not crazy wild colors, which just not me. But so I think that this is me, and I also think my niece will like it. So there's that. Which bag is it going in? It goes in that bag. So those are 2 hat projects that I have going. I have another hat for another niece who is 10, and her favorite color is kind of this aqua-y blue. So I'm actually, cats are playing, and I don't know if you heard that. So kind of an aqua-y blue, and I think that my Ganida colorway is something, actually, you may be able to see it. You see down here? Yeah. This colorway down here is basically pretty much her favorite colorway. So I'm gonna grab a skein of that. Not sure what base yet, not sure what hat pattern, but I at least know the color I want to use, and make her a hat out of that. So I have that, I have the boot cuffs, and, the little baby. I'm going to do a little hat for the baby. Oh, sorry. I thought that they wouldn't be able to jiggle the camera, but apparently the cats can. Anyway, and a little hat or something for the baby, my little niece. Call her a baby, she actually is a year old now. She turned a year old not too long ago. So those are the other projects that I have planned for gifts that I still need to finish. So Christmas is coming, a lot to do, but they're small projects, so I feel pretty comfortable with being able to get those done in time. So I have my perpetual socks, always have socks on the needles. So this is Mustache yarn in the Pumpkin Spice Latte colorway. Show you the heel too. So I finished the first sock. I did most of the leg and part of the heel when I did the trunk show at West 7th Wool, and then I turned the heel and did a little bit more shortly after that, and then the rest of it I did on our trip to Houston. We went to Houston for Thanksgiving, so the trip down there I finished off this sock and started the second sock. Oops, yarn wants to get tangled, so I started this second sock. And haven't gotten super far in it because I have been, obviously working on the gifts. So really that brioche cowl that I made for Luke's teacher, that's what I knit a lot when I was down in Houston. Actually, I finished it in the car on the way back. So second sock, the nice thing about Mustache is that she usually has 2 matching half skeins. Basically they're wound together, so that way you can make matching socks. So if you see my cuffs, they are indeed matching, and I made notes. I made notes of where I started the heel and where I started the toe, so this time I could remember and actually have matchy socks. I also did a trick that Stacy of Mustache Yarns posted on her Instagram account not too long ago, where she said basically you take, so you've got your 2 half skeins of yarn, and you find where you're going to start your cast on, and you make your slip knot in both at the same time. And then the skein that you're not using, the ball you're not using, you put it aside and make sure that slip knot doesn't come out. But that way you've measured them both, and you know exactly where to start casting on. And actually, I think it's about like here. So you can see I did that, and since it started kind of in the middle of a color, actually it was a really short stripe here, so it actually changed to the next colorway pretty quickly. But you can see I had that change kind of pretty much even. Actually, there's my cast on edge right there. Pretty much even exactly for both socks to cast on. So that was actually a really helpful tip. So basically, make your slip knot at the same slip knot on both halves of your yarn at the same time, and that way you'll know where to cast on, start your cast on for the second sock. So nice little trick there. And once I get past the Christmas gifts, I'll get back to those socks and finish them. And then I started something that's not a Christmas gift, but it's something I just really felt like starting. So I had planned, and I still plan, to make, now what is it called? His golden layer for the Q4 knit along. So remember, the theme for the Q4 knit along is any shawl pattern that is based on a literary book or character. So his golden layer is based on Tolkien, and the Lord of the Rings, and so a few cat hairs on this, and I do plan on making that, but I could not resist casting on this shawl. So right now it looks like a stripy shawl, but basically at the end there is a lacy border that goes along the end. So it starts out stripy and then is a lacy border. And this is the Cheshire Cat shawl. So the Cheshire Cat shawl still fits for literary themed. So I guess this is my entry now for the Q4 knit along. And I really just felt like working on this. Actually I'll talk about that in the what I'm dyeing. So this is actually my Camelot base in Night, which is the gray, and then my Beauty Will Not Hold, which is the pink. So I'll talk a little bit about why I'm using Camelot for that. But I really felt like casting on for this. And so I did. And since right now it basically just goes back and forth with the stripes, a few increases, it's pretty easy to work on. So I actually brought that to my knitting group to work on, because I'd finished up hats and I hadn't quite started a new one. So it was something easy to bring to work on. Anyway, so those are the things that I currently have on my needles. I will talk more about the Cheshire Cat shawl in later episodes. Not too much later, because if I want to finish it by the end of the quarter, I have until the end of December. So it kind of goes along with, even though it's not a gift, it is something that I need to finish close to Christmas time. So we'll see how that goes. And I'm looking forward to showing you guys next time the progress that I've made on these projects. What I am dyeing. Basically, I am mostly working on dyeing stuff for the yarn club. The first shipment goes out December 5th, and that yarn has been dyed for a while. So I just need to, put all the packages together, write the little note. Since December 5th is right around the corner, I actually need to do that soon so I can get the international shipments out a little bit early. I should probably try to get those out tomorrow, definitely by Saturday. So that's what I've been doing. Now I am working on the second month shipment, the one that will go out in January, and I'm almost done with that one. I have basically one more day's worth of dyeing to do, and the second month will be done, so that's exciting. And then I'll start on the third month. I basically, because the yarn club I feel is my top priority, I just kind of want to make sure that I get that done in plenty of time, and in case I run into any problems. I think I told you guys last time about the Grail base and the problem I had with that color. If I'd waited until right before shipment, then that would have been a disaster. So I like to do things in advance. So that's what I've been working on. And then once I do that, my plan is to come up with a couple of new self-striping colorways, because I realized that I've done several exclusive colorways throughout this year for the events that I've attended, and then some of the holiday ones, but I haven't really been doing very many just ones that I add to the regular lineup. It's been a while since I've done that. So I feel like it's time to add some new colorways that will be regular colorways. And the cats are kind of at it again. Wally is attacking Eva a little bit. They're at a standoff right now. Anyway, so adding in some new colorways that are going to be regular colorways. So that's my next plan after I get a good start on the next month of the third month of the Yarn Club. So doing some of those, and I already know for sure which the first one that I'm going to work on is, and then I'll kind of get some ideas and come up with some other things, so that way I will have, my goal is maybe like 3 new colorways in time for DFW Fiber Fest, possibly more, but I definitely want at least 3. So that's kind of what I'm developing. And then the other thing that I'm doing is that I really want to have more samples of things in my booth, especially for DFW Fiber Fest. Since I have a double booth, I actually will have space to be able to have samples and not feel like everything is so tight in there. So since I will have the space, I want to make sure that I'm developing some samples. And to be honest, because I am just, I've told you, if you've watched the podcast, I've told you before that the urge to design just hasn't been quite as strong. I haven't really been feeling as inspired by designing, just maybe a little burnt out. So I'm still kind of pulling back a bit on designing and not pushing myself too much there. So my plan is to actually pick other patterns that I think would highlight the yarn really nicely, and have those samples in my booth. And so I'll just have the tags on the samples to show people where they can get the patterns. So a little bit of a departure. I usually, like to say everything in this booth is something I dyed or I designed. So I'm more going to be focused on what I'm dyeing rather than designing. Not that I'm not ever going to design again. Don't think that. It just, right now, I'm just kind of taking a step back and not pushing it as much. So anyway, the Indie Design Gift Along has been taking place. It started basically the week of Thanksgiving, so I think that Tuesday, so last week on Tuesday. And it's a really wonderful event. If you're not familiar with it, basically it celebrates basically all of the wonderful indie designers that design knitting and crochet patterns, and mostly self-publish them. And there's a whole knit along or crochet along that goes along with it, so gift along, which is going on now. So if you're watching this when this episode airs, through the end of the year, so December 31st, 2017, and this is the 5th year. So if you miss it this year, if you watch this podcast after December 31st, 2017, just wait for it to come around the next November and December of next year. Anyway, so it's really wonderful. There's lots of fun and games, and people are knitting and crocheting along to all the various patterns that the designers that are participating are making. So I spent a long time, looking at the patterns from the designers, and I picked because I feel like these are indie designers who are kind of doing some of that extra work to with their patterns, and so I feel like it's a good group to choose from to basically in some ways help publicize their patterns if I do a sample in my yarn. So I went through and looked at some of the patterns that I would be interested in making. And the first one that I decided for sure I need to make is something that has been in my favorites and in my mind, I'm going to knit this someday, since it came out. And actually I'll go back. I had the picture pulled up, but It was released in June of 2014, so over 3 years that this pattern has been on my radar of I want to knit this. So this is called Levantry by Sarah Jordan. So I don't know if the lighting will, actually I guess it's not reflecting too badly off the iPad. So there's a little detail, so it's got stripes, and then it has this really pretty border edge there, and then I believe it's a picot bind off. So it's really, really pretty. I like it a lot, and it is something that I've been wanting to knit, so I decided I am going to knit it. And I actually, on Instagram, I came up with several different color combinations using Camelot, so my merino cashmere nylon fingering base, and asking people, you know, what color combination do you think would work best for this? And the combination that got the kind of majority of the comments was a gray and a teal, which I think I've got my teal. Here's if you can see the teal in here. So here's the teal, and I think this is Uther. That might be Excalibur, and a lighter gray like that, which may kind of have been because that, now the picture is small, but that sample picture that I showed you is kind of in a similar color, so that also may have kind of affected the way that you see it, because it does really look good right there. Anyway, so I will be starting that after I get some of the Christmas gifts done, making myself wait. I did cast on the other stripy shawl to kind of tide me over, so So I'm planning on making that one for sure, and I've got the colors picked out. Then I thought, so someone at the Knitting Fairy is actually doing this in my self-striping yarn. This is a pattern by Kate Atherley called Lemon Difficult, and it uses, she uses a variegated yarn and then a solid, but I thought the self-striping idea was really neat. So a self-striping yarn and a solid. So I'm not sure yet which colors I want to use there, but I know I definitely want to make that. I think that would really, really be fun to show off something that you can do with self-striping yarn besides socks. So that's my idea with that one. And then one of my new bases is Cornwall, which is the DK Weight BFL. Let me get a good picture of this one. And to me, I think that it is a yarn that is a really good sweater yarn. The BFL is not quite as soft as merino, but in its not quite as softness, it actually holds up very well to wear, so it's not going to pill as much like merino does. So I think it's a really good sweater yarn. And part of this is probably the colors, but also I do kind of like a little bit the simplicity of it. So let's see, let's get the name of it. Of course, since I pulled up the picture, it cuts off the name, so I can't read the name. So this is Stillness by Elizabeth Sullivan. So this is a sweater in 3 colors. So there you go there. That I just thought was really nice and could show off using that BFL DK Weight yarn, picking some nice colors. I really do like the colors in the sample. So possibly something that's similar to that, but I really like that, and I think that having one of my dress forms have a sweater on it rather than pretty much a naked dress form with a cowl or a shawl on it, might be something that's really nice display-wise in the booth. So what am I doing to myself? I'm basically adding all these projects and saying I'm going to finish them by DFW Fiber Fest, which is in April. We'll see how that goes. But anyway, if I finish those, there's another garment that I thought would be really pretty. And I wanted to knit this out of my Tristan base, which is the sport weight base, which I think is also a really good garment yarn. So this is Lila by Curie Fitzgerald. So this is a short sleeve sweater with a lacy stitch pattern. So I thought that might be really nice, especially for Texas, that having a short sleeve lacy sweater might be really appropriate here. So, so that's something I would also like to make as a shop sample. So we'll see how well I do. I don't knit garments very much. I usually do knit accessories, so we'll see how it goes. I've also got the cardigan for myself that I'm knitting that I showed you guys. I believe I showed you last time, the Let Go cardigan by Joji Locatelli, and that is not out of my yarn. So that is something for me, and I really do want to finish it because I would like to wear it. So I've got a couple of garments on my list of things that I'm going to knit, so we'll see how long it takes me to knit those things, as well as other stuff. I may need to potentially look into having sample knitters. I also would like to have a few crocheted items, and I already have someone who's volunteered to knit a crochet pattern, or to knit a crochet pattern. Hello, Karen. Apologize. To make a crochet pattern as a booth sample. Just need to figure out which colorway I want to use for that. So potentially I might need to look at sample knitters and definitely sample crocheters if I want to do more samples. Kind of admit to myself that I can't do everything. It's hard for me to admit that. I will be completely honest. It really is hard for me to admit that. So I can't do everything and I might need some help. So if that is something you're interested in, go ahead and send me an email and let me know. And once I get a list kind of made up of what I would like to see, because I'd like something for definitely for every base and a variety of types of projects. So I need to sit down and make that list and decide really which things I can make and which things I might be able to let other people make, loosen my reins a little bit and release some of that control over things and let other people do stuff. So if you're interested, let me know. Yeah, and that is kind of what I've been doing as far as what I'm dyeing and then planning for booth types of things. I think that should about do it for this episode. Not really watching or reading anything super exciting to talk about. So I will, if so, I will make notes to make sure to talk about that next time. So I'm not going to cover that section in this episode. So that's pretty much it for this episode. Thank you so very much for watching. If you are a first-time viewer, thank you for checking out the podcast. I hope you'll come back in 2 weeks. I release every other Thursday. And in the meantime, you can go back and watch some previous episodes. For those of you who have stuck with me and keep watching from episode to episode, thank you for coming back and spending this time with me. Hopefully the lighting is a little bit better. A little bit of a glow in some areas, so maybe I need to check the placement of the lights, but I hope it's a little better. The floor seemed to work a little bit nicer for the cats. They're actually both asleep right now. And it is kind of fun to have the backdrop be some pretty yarn. So I'll keep playing around with lighting and location to make sure that you guys can see things more clearly. Hopefully you saw the colors and some of the detail a little bit better with the better lighting going on this time. So let me know what you think if you have any suggestions about that. And I will be back in 2 weeks. So until then, happy knitting!